You think saving some random woman makes you a hero? Rico leaned across his grease-stained desk, his face twisted with contempt. You're fired! I don't need a worker who can't show up. He tore Lisa Georgy's time card in half and threw the pieces at her blood-soaked uniform. Her white co-worker snickered from the doorway. Lisa tried to explain. A bleeding woman in an alley, blood pouring from her head, barely breathing. She'd stabilized her, called 911. She may have saved a life. Rico leaned closer, voice dropping to a cold whisper. You're a waitress, not a doctor. Real workers show up. He grabbed her final paycheck and dumped it in the trash. Get your black ass out of my diner. Lisa stood there, destroyed, humiliated, staring at the uniform she couldn't afford to replace, now stained with someone else's blood. But she had no idea who that blood belonged to. 3 days later, a helicopter landed in her apartment complex yard. The woman Lisa saved stepped out, bandaged but alive. The wife of Jack Aaron, the most feared MAFIA boss on the East Coast. And she came to destroy everyone who hurt Lisa. If you're excited to dive into this story, hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Your support helps us share more amazing stories. And believe me, you won't want to miss them. Now, let's jump into the story. Chapter 72. 2 hours earlier. Thursday, 7:12 a.m. Lisa's phone alarm screamed. Morning shift at Rico's, 7:30 a.m. Sharp. Late meant written up. 2 write-ups meant fired. She couldn't afford to be fired. Lisa threw on yesterday's uniform. She couldn't afford laundry either. She grabbed her keys, her bag, the photo of her father before the cancer, before the medical bills that drowned them both. I'm going to make it, Dad. I promise. She ran into the November cold. The streets were already packed, commuters rushing, car horns blaring, the city waking up loud and unforgiving. Lisa cut through the alley behind Market Street. It was faster, shadier. But it saved 3 minutes. Then she saw her. A woman slumped against the graffiti-covered brick wall, blood streaming down her forehead, soaking into her blonde hair. Her expensive coat was torn. Her phone lay shattered beside her outstretched hand. Her eyes were half closed, unfocused, barely there. People walked past without stopping. A jogger glanced but kept running. 2 college students crossed the street to avoid the scene. Nobody helped. Lisa checked her phone, 7:18 a.m., 12 minutes until her shift. The woman's lips moved, barely a whisper. Help! Lisa dropped to her knees. Her hands moved on instinct, old medical training from the 2 years she'd managed before dropping out. Checking vitals, pulse weak and thready, pupils unequal. Blood pooling from a deep laceration above the temple, head trauma, possible brain bleed. She's going into shock. Lisa dialed 911. This is Lisa Georgy, unresponsive female, approximately late 40s, head trauma with active bleeding, unequal pupils, signs of shock, alley behind Market and 18th East Side. Ambulance is 6 minutes out. 6 minutes. In a head injury, 6 minutes could mean life or death. Lisa pressed her apron against the wound. Blood soaked through instantly, warm and sticky against her fingers. Ma'am, stay with me. What's your name? The woman's eyelids fluttered. Her lips formed a word. Maria. I'm Lisa. I'm not leaving you, Maria. A businessman slowed, staring. Give me your jacket, Lisa ordered. He hesitated. Now. He handed it over and hurried away. Lisa wrapped it around Maria's shoulders, preserving body heat, keeping her stable. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. 7:24 a.m. The bus to Rico's pulled up at the corner, idled for 30 seconds, then drove away. Lisa didn't look. The ambulance arrived 8 minutes later. What do we have? The lead paramedic, Rodriguez, according to his badge, knelt beside Lisa. Unresponsive female, head trauma, unequal pupils, weak pulse, shock symptoms. Injury occurred approximately 10 minutes ago based on blood coagulation. I've maintained pressure and monitored vitals. Rodriguez looked at Lisa, at the blood covering her hands, her uniform, her face, at the calm control in her eyes. You saved her life. Seriously. Another 15 minutes and we'd be calling the coroner. The ambulance doors slammed shut. Sirens wailed. Maria disappeared into the back, alive because Lisa had stopped. Lisa stood alone in the alley, blood drying on her hands, her phone exploding with messages. Rico, where are you? Rico, you're late. Rico, don't bother coming in. The shift had started 17 minutes ago. Lisa walked to the diner anyway, blood-stained and shaking, dreading what came next. But in the distance, watching from the mouth of the alley, a man in a black suit lowered his phone. He'd seen everything, and he would remember. Lisa Georgy never expected her life to look like this. Once a rising medical student with top grades and a future she could practically touch, she'd dropped out when her father got sick and the medical bills drowned her family. With no degree and no savings, she took the only job she could find, a full-time waitress at Rico's diner. Every shift mattered. Every dollar mattered. Missing one shift meant losing her rent. But fate has a habit of testing people like Lisa. And this morning, fate had just lit the fuse. Lisa arrived 23 minutes late. She'd run the entire way from the bus stop, her lungs burning, her chest still tight from the panic that had gripped her in that alley. Her hands trembled as she pushed through the glass doors of Rico's diner, the bell above jingling like an accusation. Rico was waiting. 23 minutes, Lisa. His voice boomed across the empty morning dining room, loud enough that the prep cook flinched in the kitchen. You think I pay you to show up whenever you feel like it? I'm sorry, there was an emergency. I don't care if the president called you. Rico's face was crimson, a vein pulsing at his temple. You're here to work, not to make excuses. Lisa opened her mouth, then closed it. What could she say? I saved a woman's life this morning? The words felt too big, too impossible. They belonged to someone braver than her, someone who mattered. Get to work, Rico spat. And you're covering Denise's shift tonight. No overtime. The day crawled forward like something wounded. Her co-workers whispered when she passed. Snickers behind cupped hands, eyes that slid away when she looked up. Marcy accidentally spilled a tray of ketchup bottles Lisa had just finished refilling. Jordan made a big show of checking his watch every time she came back from a table. Rough morning, huh? He said, grinning. Must be nice to just stroll in whenever. Lisa said nothing. She wiped down tables, refilled coffee, smiled at customers who didn't see her. The whole time, her mind kept returning to the alley, to the woman's pale face, to the blood. Did she survive? The question gnawed at her, but she had no way of knowing. No one to ask. She was just a waitress who'd stumbled into someone else's tragedy. At 4 o'clock, Rico called her into his office. It was barely a closet, a desk, a filing cabinet, a single flickering overhead light. Rico sat behind the desk like a judge passing sentence. You're done, he said flatly. Lisa blinked. What? You're fired, effective immediately. The words hit her like cold water. But I've never been late before. I've worked here for 3 years. You're unreliable. Rico leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. Frankly, I should have let you go months ago. Always looking tired, always distracted. I need people I can count on. Please, Lisa whispered. I need this job. I can't. Save it. He waved a hand dismissively. Pick up your last check Friday, and don't use me as a reference. She stood there, frozen, until he barked. We done here? Lisa left without a word. Outside, the afternoon sun felt too bright, too indifferent. She walked mechanically toward the bus stop, her mind blank, her body moving on autopilot. She didn't know that Rico had already made another call to her landlord. Yeah, I had to let her go, Rico said into the phone, his voice dripping with false regret. Unreliable, always late. Thought you should know. You said to keep you posted if there were any issues. The eviction notice was waiting when she got home. It was taped to her door, bright and official and impossible to ignore. Notice to vacate. 14 days. Lisa tore it down with shaking hands and stumbled inside. The apartment was silent, empty. The single window let in a slice of gray light that made everything look washed out, lifeless. She stood in the middle of the room, the notice crumpled in her fist, and felt the full weight of it crash down on her. No job, no home. The utility bills sat on the counter. Red stamped threats she'd been ignoring for weeks. Final notice. Service will be disconnected. Her phone buzzed. A text from the diner's payroll company. Your final paycheck is under review due to inventory discrepancies. Payout delayed pending investigation. Lisa sank to the floor. She didn't cry at first. She just sat there, surrounded by bills she couldn't pay, staring at the peeling paint on the wall. Then slowly, the tears came. Silent at first, then harder, until her whole body shook with it. She'd saved someone today, and this was her reward. Across the street, in a black sedan with tinted windows, a man watched. He was tall, sharp-featured, dressed in a suit that cost more than Lisa's monthly rent. His eyes, dark, calculating, tracked her shadow moving behind the thin curtains of her apartment window. He'd been there that morning, standing at the mouth of the alley, watching as Lisa pressed her hands to a dying woman's wound. Watching as she made a choice. Most people would have walked past. Most people had. But not her. The man's phone buzzed. He answered without looking away from the window. Yes, he said quietly. I found her. A pause. No, she doesn't know anything yet. Another pause, longer this time. Understood. I'll keep watching. He ended the call and leaned back in his seat, his gaze never leaving Lisa's building. She had no idea who he was. No idea that the woman she'd saved wasn't just anyone. No idea that saving a life could be the most dangerous thing she'd ever done. But she would. Soon. Retry Maria Aaron opened her eyes to white ceiling tiles and the steady beep of a heart monitor. For a moment, she didn't remember. Then the pain bloomed across her abdomen, dull, insistent, and it all came rushing back. The street, the knife. The cold spreading through her body like water. And the girl. You're awake. The voice was low, tight with restrained emotion. Maria turned her head slowly, every movement deliberate, and found her husband standing at her bedside. Jack Aaron looked like he hadn't slept in days. His suit was immaculate as always, charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, but his jaw was shadowed with stubble, his dark eyes bloodshot. He stood rigid, hands gripping the bed rail so hard his knuckles had gone white. When he saw her looking at him, something cracked in his expression. Maria. He reached for her hand, his touch surprisingly gentle. Christo, I thought. I'm alive. she whispered. Her throat was raw, her voice barely there. Barely. The word came out like gravel. Jack's jaw clenched, the muscle jumping beneath his skin. The doctor said another 5 minutes and... He couldn't finish. Didn't need to. Maria squeezed his hand weakly. How long have I been here? 18 hours. Jack pulled a chair close, sat without letting go of her. Private suite. Best surgeons in the city. No police. No records. Of course. Jack Aaron didn't deal with police. The police dealt with him. What happened? His voice dropped lower, dangerous. Tell me everything. Maria closed her eyes, the memory sharp and jagged. I don't know who he was. Young, desperate. He came out of nowhere. She paused, breathing carefully around the pain. He wanted my purse, my jewelry. I tried to give it to him, but he... Her hand moved instinctively to her stomach, to the bandages beneath the hospital gown. He stabbed me anyway. Jack's expression went cold, flat. It was the look he got before someone disappeared. And then? He prompted. I fell. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Maria's eyes opened, focusing on something distant. People walked past me, Jack. So many people. Like I was invisible. His grip on her hand tightened. But then she came. Who? A girl. Black girl, young, early 20s maybe. She was wearing a waitress uniform. Maria's voice softened with something like wonder. She didn't hesitate, just dropped to her knees and pressed her hands against the wound. Kept talking to me, telling me to stay awake, to hold on. Jack leaned forward. Did she give you a name? No, but... Maria's brow furrowed. Her uniform. There was a name tag. Lisa. Lisa G, I think. Lisa G, Jack repeated, committing it to memory. She saved my life. Maria's eyes met his, clear and certain. Without her, I'd be dead. Jack stood abruptly, the chair scraping against tile. He pulled out his phone, already dialing. Vincent, get everyone together, now. The war room was in the basement of one of Jack's legitimate businesses, a restaurant that served as a front for everything that mattered. 6 men sat around a table. Vincent, Jack's right hand. Marcus, head of security. And 4 others whose specialties ranged from technology to persuasion. Jack stood at the head of the table, a photograph projected on the wall behind him. Maria, in the alley, blood pooling beneath her, and kneeling beside her, a young black woman in a waitress uniform, her hands pressed to the wound, her face tight with concentration. Her name is Lisa. Lisa G. Jack's voice was controlled, but beneath it ran a current of lethal focus. She saved my wife's life. I want to know everything about her, where she works, where she lives, who she talks to. I want it now. Vincent nodded, already pulling up a laptop. We have the ambulance route, cross-referencing with businesses along that path that have a Lisa on payroll. Security footage, Marcus added. I'll pull everything from a 3-block radius. And witnesses, Jack said. Someone saw something. Someone always does. The room moved with precision, practiced efficiency. These were men who made people appear and disappear. Finding one waitress would take hours, not days. Jack returned to the hospital before dawn. He stood at the window of Maria's suite, watching the city wake up in shades of gray and gold. Behind him, his wife slept, her breathing steady, machines monitoring every heartbeat. His phone buzzed. Vincent, found her. Lisa Green. 24. Worked at Rico's Diner on 5th. Lives at 1847 Parkway, Apt 3B. Jack stared at the message. Then, worked? Past tense? Vincent. Fired yesterday. Eviction notice posted this morning. Looks like she's in trouble. Jack's expression darkened. The girl had saved his wife's life, risked herself when no one else would, and the world had punished her for it. Not anymore. He typed back. Don't approach her yet. Watch her. Make sure she's safe. I'll handle this personally. He pocketed the phone and looked back at Maria. She was still sleeping, one hand resting over the bandages, her face peaceful in a way it hadn't been since the attack. Jack made a decision. Lisa Green had given him back his wife. He would give her back her life, and anyone who stood in the way of that, Rico, her landlord, whoever else had decided she was expendable, would learn what it meant to cross Jack Aaron. He didn't sleep. He wouldn't. Not until he found her. Lisa's hands trembled as she folded another shirt into the cardboard box. 3 days. That's all she had left before the eviction became official. 3 days to figure out where a broke, jobless black woman with no references could possibly go. The apartment felt smaller now, suffocating. Tape sealed half-packed boxes. Her mattress leaned against the wall, stripped bare. The final notice from the landlord sat on the counter like a death sentence stamped in red. Vacate by Friday, 5 p.m. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. No more crying. She'd cried enough. The stack of medical bills for her father sat beside the eviction notice. Unpaid, overdue, crushing. She'd called the hospital 3 times this week. They were reviewing her case. Translation? They were deciding whether to sue. Lisa picked up a framed photo, her and her father at her high school graduation. His smile, wide and proud, her cap crooked, her future bright. That girl was gone now. She set the frame into the box and sealed it with packing tape, and then, boom, 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 boom. The walls shook. Lisa froze. The sound was massive, rhythmic, mechanical, like the heartbeat of something monstrous descending from the sky. Boom, 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 boom. The windows rattled violently. The glass shivered in its frame. A coffee mug vibrated off the counter and shattered on the floor. Outside, car alarms exploded in a chorus of panic. What the hell? Lisa stumbled to the window. The noise grew deafening. Through the glass, she saw it. A black helicopter descending over the apartment complex. Massive, sleek, military grade. The rotors churned the air into a whirlwind, tearing at trees, scattering trash, bending streetlights. Dust and debris spiraled upward in violent clouds. Oh my God! Lisa's neighbors poured out of their units screaming, phones raised, recording everything. Is that the feds? Call 911! Get the kids inside! The helicopter hovered lower, impossibly close, the roar of its engine swallowing every other sound. It blotted out the sun. Lisa's heart hammered in her chest. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe. And then it landed. Right in the middle of the apartment complex yard. The rotors kicked up a storm of dirt and grass. Chain-link fences rattled. Laundry flew off clotheslines. People screamed and ducked for cover. Lisa didn't think. She ran. Barefoot, in sweatpants and a tank top, she bolted out the door and down the concrete stairs, her pulse roaring louder than the helicopter blades. By the time she reached the yard, a crowd had formed. Neighbors pressed against fences, filming, shouting, confused and terrified. The helicopter's door opened. A tall man stepped out. He moved with the kind of confidence that didn't need to be loud. Every step deliberate, every movement controlled. Black suit, tailored perfectly. No tie. White shirt open at the collar. His face was hard. Sharp jawline. Cold eyes that swept the crowd like a predator assessing prey. Dark hair slicked back. Presence like a shock wave. He didn't look at anyone else. Only her. Lisa's breath caught. She knew that face. She'd seen it before, barely, in the blur of chaos 3 days ago. The man who'd been watching from the alley. The man who'd stood in the shadows while she saved the bleeding woman. He walked toward her, slow and steady, ignoring the shouting neighbors, the flashing phones, the chaos around him. Lisa's legs felt like stone. He stopped 2 feet away. Up close, he was terrifying, not because he threatened her, but because his power was undeniable. It radiated off him like heat, like gravity. His voice was low, controlled, absolute. "You saved my wife." Lisa's mouth opened, but no sound came out. "I'm here to repay the debt." She blinked, her mind scrambling. I don't... My name is Jack Aaron." The name hit her like a physical blow. Jack Aaron. Even in her small, broken world, she'd heard whispers of that name. Rumors. Legends. A man you didn't cross. A man who controlled things most people didn't even know existed. A mafia boss. Lisa's knees nearly buckled. "I don't want anything," she stammered, taking a step back. I helped her because..." "I know why." His eyes didn't soften, but something shifted. Respect, maybe, or recognition. "And now you're being punished for it." Lisa's throat tightened. How did he know? Jack's gaze flicked briefly to the eviction notice taped to her door, visible even from here. Then back to her. "You're coming with me." It wasn't a question. It wasn't even a request. It was a command. Lisa shook her head, panic rising. "I can't just..." Jack turned slightly, gesturing toward the helicopter. The door was still open. Inside, she could see leather seats. Soft lighting. A world completely opposite to the crumbling concrete and chain-link fences around her. "You saved my wife's life, Lisa." His voice dropped, quieter now, but somehow heavier. "I don't leave debts unpaid." Her name. He knew her name. Lisa's heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst. The crowd watched in stunned silence. Phones still recording, mouths open. Jack extended his hand. Not forceful, not cruel, but absolute. Lisa looked at his hand, then at the helicopter, then at her apartment, her boxes, her eviction notice, her shattered life. She had nothing left to lose. Slowly, trembling, she placed her hand in his. His grip was firm, steady, unyielding. He led her toward the helicopter. The rotors began spinning faster. And as Lisa climbed inside, barefoot and terrified, the door closed behind her. The last thing she saw through the window was her neighbors. Mouths open. Phones flashing. As the helicopter lifted off the ground and carried her into a world she could never have imagined. The helicopter landed on the roof of a building Lisa didn't recognize. Private. Guarded. The kind of place that didn't appear on maps. Jack led her through a series of corridors. Marble floors, high ceilings, armed men in suits who nodded as he passed. Lisa's bare feet made no sound against the cold stone. She should have been terrified. She was. But something else burned underneath the fear. Confusion. Why was she here? What did this man want from her? Jack stopped at a heavy wooden door and pushed it open. "Wait here." Before Lisa could respond, he disappeared inside. She stood alone in the hallway, heart hammering, every instinct screaming at her to run. But where? How? The door opened again, and this time, a woman stepped out. Lisa's breath caught. It was her, the woman from the alley, the one she'd saved. She was standing now, wrapped in a silk robe, her blonde hair loose around her shoulders. A white bandage covered part of her forehead. Bruises darkened her cheekbone and jaw. Her eyes were red-rimmed, exhausted, but alive. Alive because of Lisa. The woman's face crumpled the moment she saw her. "It's you," she whispered, and then she ran. Lisa barely had time to brace herself before the woman threw her arms around her, pulling her into a fierce, desperate embrace. "Thank you," the woman sobbed into Lisa's shoulder. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." Lisa stood frozen, her arms slowly rising to return the hug. The woman was trembling, crying, holding her like she was the only solid thing in the world. I'm just glad you're okay," Lisa stammered. The woman pulled back, gripping Lisa's shoulders, tears streaming down her face. "You saved my life. Do you understand? You saved my life." Lisa swallowed hard. "Anyone would have—" "No!" The woman's voice was firm now, fierce. "No one else stopped. No one else cared." Behind them, Jack Aaron stood in the doorway, silent, watching. His eyes tracked every movement, every word, every tear. His expression was unreadable, cold, controlled. But there was something underneath, something dangerous. The woman wiped her eyes and took Lisa's hand, leading her into the room. It was a private suite, elegant, comfortable. Medical equipment lined one wall. Monitors, IV stands, medication trays. A team of doctors had clearly been here. The woman sat on the edge of the bed and gestured for Lisa to sit beside her. "My name is Maria," she said softly. "Maria Aaron." Lisa glanced at Jack, still standing by the door, arms crossed. "I'm Lisa." Maria smiled through her tears. "I know. Jack told me." Lisa's stomach twisted. How much did they know? "Tell me what happened," Maria said gently. "From the beginning." Lisa hesitated, her hands twisted in her lap, but Maria's eyes were warm, kind, safe. So Lisa told her. She told her about the alley, the blood, the way Maria's eyes had been barely open, her pulse weak, how Lisa had pressed her jacket against the wound, talked her through it, kept her conscious until the paramedics arrived. Maria listened, crying quietly, her hand gripping Lisa's. And Jack stood like a statue. His jaw was tight, his eyes dark. Every word Lisa spoke seemed to carve something deeper into him. When Lisa finished, Maria squeezed her hand. "You were late to work because of me." Lisa nodded. "What happened after?" Lisa's throat closed. She didn't want to say it, didn't want to relive it, but Maria's gaze was steady, expectant. I got fired." Lisa's voice cracked. "My boss said I was unreliable. He called me—" She stopped, shame burning in her chest. "What did he call you?" Maria's voice had an edge now. Lisa's eyes dropped. "He said I should have minded my business, that real workers show up. He told me to get my black ass out of his diner." Maria's hand tightened around hers. Behind them, Jack's jaw flexed. "Then my landlord evicted me," Lisa continued, the words spilling out now. "My boss reported me as a problem tenant. I lost my apartment. My electricity got shut off. I couldn't pay my father's medical bills. Her voice broke. "I lost everything?" The room fell silent. Maria turned to look at her husband. Jack hadn't moved, but something in him had changed. His eyes were black, empty, cold, not toward Lisa, toward the world that had punished her. "Names," Jack said quietly. His voice was calm, too calm. Maria understood immediately. "Jack?" "Names." Lisa looked up, confused. "What?" "Your boss, your landlord, everyone who hurt you." Jack's gaze locked onto hers. "I want their names." Lisa shook her head. "You don't have to." "Names, Lisa." It wasn't a request. Lisa's mouth went dry. She glanced at Maria, who nodded gently. So she told him. Rico Castellano, owner of Rico's Diner, Vincent Moretti, her landlord. The co-workers who laughed, the manager who sneered. Jack listened in silence. Then he pulled out his phone, turned, and walked out of the room. The door closed softly behind him. Maria smiled sadly. "He's going to fix this." "Fix what?" Lisa whispered. Maria's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Everything." That night, Rico Castellano was closing the diner when the first inspector arrived. Health department. "Routine inspection," the woman said, clipboard in hand. 30 minutes later, the fire marshal showed up, then the labor board, then the IRS. By midnight, Rico's Diner had 16 violations, 4 citations, and a court summons for unpaid employee wages. The locks were changed, the doors were sealed. A foreclosure notice was taped to the window. Rico stood on the sidewalk, staring at his ruined business, his phone ringing nonstop with lawyers, creditors, investigators. He didn't know why. He didn't know how, but his life was over. Vincent Moretti woke to federal agents at his door. His properties were under investigation. Tax fraud, housing violations, illegal evictions. By morning, his assets were frozen. His tenants were filing lawsuits. His reputation was destroyed. Lisa's former manager received a phone call at 2 a.m., an unknown number. She answered groggily. A calm, cold voice said, "You left when Lisa Georgy was fired. You have 48 hours to apologize, publicly, or I'll make sure you never work again." The line went dead. She never found out who called. But 2 days later, she posted a trembling apology video online. Jack Aaron returned to the suite an hour later. His expression was unchanged. He said nothing, but Lisa saw it in his eyes. Justice had been served, and not a single enemy was left standing. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse suite. Lisa stood at the glass, looking down at a city that suddenly felt impossibly small. Behind her, Jack Aaron sat in a leather chair, a cup of black coffee untouched on the table beside him. Maria had gone to rest, leaving them alone. The silence stretched. Finally, Jack spoke. "Sit." Lisa turned. His tone wasn't harsh, but it carried the weight of someone unused to being disobeyed. She sat across from him, her hands folded in her lap. Jack leaned forward, elbows on his knees, studying her with those cold, calculating eyes. "You saved my wife's life," he said. "That debt cannot be repaid with words, so I'm going to ask you once, and I need you to answer honestly." Lisa's throat went dry. "What do you want?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Lisa blinked. I don't understand." "Money." Jack's voice was matter-of-fact, clinical. "How much do you need? 50,000? 100? Name the number. Lisa shook her head. I don't. A house then. Fully paid. Wherever you want. I can have the deed in your name by tomorrow. Mr. Aaron, a car. Security. A new identity if you need one. He spoke like he was reading from a menu. I can erase your debts. Erase your past. Give you a life where no one will ever hurt you again. His words should have sounded generous. Instead, they sounded like inevitabilities. Lisa stared at him, her mind spinning. This man, this terrifying, powerful man, was offering her everything most people dreamed of, and all she felt was hollow. I don't want money, she said quietly. Jack's eyes narrowed slightly. Everyone wants money. Not me? Then what? His voice sharpened, just a fraction. What do you want, Lisa? She looked down at her hands, the hands that had pressed against Maria's bleeding forehead, the hands that had once held textbooks, scalpels, dreams. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. You're going to be a doctor, baby girl. You're going to save lives. She looked up, meeting Jack's gaze directly for the first time. I want a chance to finish medical school. The silence that followed was deafening. Jack didn't move, didn't blink. He just stared at her. Lisa's heart pounded. Had she said something wrong? Was this too much? Not enough? Finally, Jack leaned back in his chair. Medical school, he repeated slowly. Yes. Not a mansion, not a fortune, not protection from your enemies. No. Jack tilted his head slightly, studying her like she was a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. You're sitting across from a man who could give you anything in the world, he said quietly. And you ask for an education. Lisa lifted her chin. I dropped out 3 years ago. My father got sick. The bills piled up. I couldn't afford tuition and his treatments, so Her voice cracked. I gave up my dream to save him. Jack's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. And now? He asked. Now I worked, as a waitress, drowning in debt, watching my life slip away. Lisa's hands clenched in her lap. I don't want money, Mr. Aaron. I want my future back. I want to finish what I started. I want to save lives. That's all I've ever wanted. The room fell silent again. Jack stood abruptly and walked to the window, hands in his pockets, staring out at the city. Lisa held her breath. When he finally turned back, his face was unreadable, but when he spoke, his voice carried absolute certainty. Done. Lisa blinked. What? Jack pulled out his phone. You'll have everything you need within 48 hours. Wait, I didn't mean... You saved Maria's life, Lisa. Jack's eyes locked onto hers. I don't do half measures. If you want medical school, you'll have medical school. He made the first call before she could respond. 48 hours later, Lisa stood in the lobby of St. Catherine's University School of Medicine, her hands trembling as she held the acceptance letter. Reinstatement approved, full tuition scholarship, all prior debts forgiven. She read it 3 times. It didn't feel real. Miss Georgy? She looked up. A woman in a crisp blazer smiled at her. I'm Dr. Reyes, the Dean of Admissions. We're so pleased to have you back. Your records have been fully restored, and your academic standing is excellent. Lisa's throat tightened. Thank you. I don't know what to say. Dr. Reyes's smile was warm but professional. We received a very generous endowment from an anonymous donor. They were quite insistent that you be given every opportunity to succeed. Anonymous. Lisa almost laughed. Your classes begin Monday, Dr. Reyes continued. We've also arranged a part-time position for you at St. Michael's Hospital. Assistant work, nothing that will interfere with your studies. The pay is excellent. Lisa nodded numbly. Oh, and your housing has been taken care of. The university has a new residence program for returning students. You've been assigned a one-bedroom apartment near campus, fully furnished. Security included. Security, of course. Lisa swallowed hard. Thank you, Dr. Reyes. Welcome back, Miss Georgy. We're lucky to have you. The apartment was more than Lisa ever could have imagined. Spacious, clean, safe. A real kitchen, a real bed, windows that actually locked. Her medical textbooks sat on the desk, brand new editions. A laptop, a stethoscope. Scrubs in her size. Everything she needed, everything she'd lost, everything she'd been denied. And in the kitchen, a handwritten note on expensive stationery. Your debt is paid. Your future is yours. Don't waste it. J.A. Hey. Lisa sank onto the couch, the note trembling in her hands. She didn't cry. She'd cried enough. Instead, she looked around her new apartment, her new life, and felt something she hadn't felt in 3 years. Hope, for the first time since her father got sick. Since she'd dropped out, since her world had collapsed. She could breathe. That evening, her phone buzzed. An unknown number. She answered cautiously. Hello? Lisa. Jack's voice was calm, steady. Your security detail will be outside your building. You won't see them, but they'll be there. If you need anything at all, you call this number. Mr. Aaron, You start Monday. Don't be late. There was a pause, then quieter. Make Maria proud. The line went dead. Lisa stared at her phone, a small, shaky smile crossing her face. She set it down, opened her first textbook, and began to read. Her new life had begun, and this time, no one was going to take it away. Chapter 7. The Enemy's Return. Lisa's first 2 weeks at medical school felt like a dream she was terrified of waking from. The lectures, the labs, the weight of a stethoscope around her neck again. She belonged here. She'd forgotten what that felt like. Thursday evening, she stayed late at the library, studying for her anatomy midterm. When she finally packed up, the campus was quiet, the sky dark. She walked toward her apartment, textbooks heavy in her bag, her mind still running through muscle groups and nerve pathways. She didn't notice the car idling at the corner. Didn't see the 2 men watching from across the street. Didn't realize she was being followed until it was too late. The alley behind her building was dimly lit, a shortcut she'd taken dozens of times. Lisa was halfway through when she heard the footsteps behind her. Fast, deliberate. She turned, and a hand clamped over her mouth. Don't scream. The voice was rough, cruel. A second man grabbed her arms, yanking her backward. Lisa's textbooks hit the ground. She tried to scream, but the hand pressed harder, choking off her air. We know who you are, the first man hissed in her ear. Jack Aaron's little charity case. Panic exploded through her chest. She thrashed, kicking, clawing, but they were too strong. You're gonna deliver a message for us, the second man growled. They dragged her deeper into the alley, away from the streetlights, into the shadows. Lisa's heart hammered, her vision blurred with terror. Not again, not again, not again! She twisted violently, and one of them lost his grip. She screamed, "Help! Help!" A fist slammed into her face. Pain exploded across her cheekbone. Her head snapped back, hitting the brick wall behind her. Blood. She tasted it, felt it running down her lip. The world spun. "Shut her up!" Hands grabbed her hair, yanking her down. Her knees hit the pavement, sharp and brutal. Just like before. Just like the image of Maria. Bleeding, broken, helpless. "Tell Jack Aaron the Volkov family doesn't forget," the first man snarled. "Tell him if he wants a war, we'll give him one." Lisa's vision swam. She could barely see through the tears and blood. One of them pulled out a knife. "Maybe we should leave him a better message. Get away from her!" The shout came from the mouth of the alley. Lisa's security detail, 2 men in dark suits, came running, guns drawn. The attackers cursed and bolted, disappearing into the maze of alleys before the guards could reach them. Lisa collapsed against the wall, gasping, her face throbbing, blood dripping onto her shirt. One of the guards crouched beside her. "Miss Georgy, are you hurt?" She couldn't answer, couldn't speak. The second guard was already on his phone. "We have a code red. The target was attacked. We need immediate extraction and medical—" "And get Jack," the first guard said grimly. "Now!" Lisa was sitting on the back of an ambulance when Jack arrived. The paramedics had cleaned her face, pressed an ice pack to her swelling cheek. Her lip was split. A bruise was already darkening her jaw. She looked up and saw him, Jack Aaron, striding through the crowd of police officers and paramedics like they didn't exist. His face was a mask of pure, cold fury. He reached her in seconds, his eyes sweeping over her injuries, the blood, the bruises, the terror still written in her expression. "Who?" Jack said quietly. It was the most dangerous word Lisa had ever heard. I don't know," she stammered. "2 men. They said they were Volkov." Jack's jaw clenched so hard she heard it. He turned to his men. "Where were you?" The guard who'd called him looked sick. "They came from the north entrance. We were positioned at the front. By the time we heard her scream, she was alone," Jack interrupted, his voice dropping to a lethal whisper. "You let her walk into an ambush alone." The guard paled. "Sir, we—" Jack turned away from him, dismissing him like trash. He crouched in front of Lisa, his eyes locking onto hers. For a moment, the fury faded. Something else surfaced. Something Lisa hadn't seen before. Guilt. "Did they hurt you anywhere else?" His voice was softer now, but still edged with violence. Lisa shook her head. Just my face. They wanted to send you a message." "What message?" "That the Volkov family doesn't forget. That if you want a war," her voice broke, "they said they'd give you one." Jack stood slowly. His expression went completely blank. But Lisa felt the shift in the air, like the moment before lightning strikes. Jack pulled out his phone and dialed. He didn't wait for a greeting. "Victor, I want every asset we have on the Volkov family. Every location, every soldier, every safe house." His voice was ice. "I want them found. I want them isolated. And I want them ready for me by morning." A pause. "I don't care what it costs. I don't care who you have to move. They touched what's mine. His eyes flicked to Lisa. So, we're going to war. He ended the call. Then he made another. Maria, I need you to come get Lisa. She's been hurt. Lisa heard Maria's panicked voice through the phone, but Jack's tone didn't change. She's safe now. But I need you here. I can't stay. He hung up and turned back to Lisa. You're going to stay with Maria until this is over, he said. No arguments, no exceptions. Mr. Aaron, they came for you because of me. His voice cracked, just barely. Because you saved Maria. Because I brought you into this world. That's on me. It's not your fault. Yes, it is. Jack's eyes burned into hers. But I promise you, Lisa, they will never touch you again. He stepped back, his face hardening again. I'm going to end this. Lisa watched as he walked away, barking orders into his phone, his men falling into formation around him. She'd seen Jack Aaron angry before, but this was different. This was a man declaring war, and she knew with absolute certainty that the Volkov family had made the last mistake they'd ever make. By sunrise, 3 Volkov safe houses were burning. By noon, their supply lines were cut. By nightfall, their soldiers were running. Jack Aaron had gone to war, and he was winning. The war lasted 72 hours. Lisa watched it unfold from Maria's penthouse, where she'd been sequestered under armed guard, while Jack dismantled the Volkov family piece by piece. The news called it organized crime violence. They had no idea it was an execution. Hour 12. A warehouse on the east side erupted in flames. Volkov's primary weapons cache, gone. Hour 24. 3 high-ranking Volkov soldiers vanished overnight. Their cars found abandoned. No bodies, no witnesses. Hour 36. Federal agents raided a Volkov front company. Anonymous tips. Forensic accountants. Years of money laundering exposed in a single morning. Hour 48. The Volkov patriarch, Sergei Volkov himself, fled the country on a private jet. His accounts frozen. His allies scattered. Hour 60. The 2 men who'd attacked Lisa were found by police, beaten and bound, with a typed confession duct taped to their chests. They were arrested on sight. Hour 72. The Volkov organization ceased to exist. No territory, no soldiers, no money, just ghosts and ashes. Jack Aaron had erased them from the map. Lisa sat in Maria's living room, staring at the news coverage, her stomach churning. Maria brought her tea, sitting beside her on the couch. "He did this for me," Lisa whispered. Maria's hand covered hers. "He did this because someone hurt you, and Jack doesn't forgive that." "People are dead, Maria. People who tried to kill you. Twice." Lisa looked at her. "Does that make it right?" Maria's expression softened. "No, but it makes it necessary." Lisa didn't know how to respond to that. She was a medical student. She'd taken an oath to save lives, not end them. But the men who'd attacked her, the ones who'd hurt Maria, they weren't innocent. The moral weight of it crushed her. "I need to talk to him," Lisa said finally. Maria nodded. "He'll be back tonight." Jack walked through the door just after midnight. He looked exhausted. Suit rumpled, tie gone, shadows under his eyes, but unharmed. Lisa stood from the couch, her heart pounding. Jack stopped when he saw her, his eyes scanning her face. The bruises had faded to yellow-green. The split lip was healing. You should be resting, he said quietly. I need to talk to you. Jack glanced at Maria, who gave him a knowing look and disappeared into the other room. He turned back to Lisa, waiting. She took a breath. I didn't ask for blood. Jack's expression didn't change. I know. Then why? Lisa's voice cracked. Why did you do it? The violence, the destruction, people are dead because of me. No. Jack's voice was firm, cutting through her spiral. People are dead because they made a choice. They chose to hurt Maria. They chose to come after you. I didn't start this war, Lisa. I ended it. By burning their world down? Yes. The answer was so blunt, so absolute, it stole her breath. Jack stepped closer, his eyes locked on hers. You asked for my protection, he said quietly. This is what it looks like. Not pretty words, not empty promises. Real protection means making sure the people who hurt you never get a second chance. I don't want to be responsible for... You're not. Jack's voice was steel. I am. You saved Maria. You showed mercy when no one else would. That's who you are. He paused. This, what I do, is who I am. I don't apologize for it. Lisa stared at him, tears burning her eyes. I heal people, Jack. You... I protect them. His jaw tightened. We're not so different, Lisa. You save lives. I make sure they stay saved. The silence stretched between them, heavy, complicated, charged. Lisa wiped her eyes. I don't know if I can live in this world. You don't have to. Jack's voice softened just slightly. You go back to school. You become a doctor. You save lives. That's your world. This... He gestured vaguely. This is mine. But when the two collide, I'll handle it. Always. Lisa looked at him, really looked at him. She saw the exhaustion, the weight, the cold calculation that kept his family safe. And underneath it all, honor. Twisted, brutal honor. But honor nonetheless. I don't agree with your methods, she said finally. I don't expect you to. But she swallowed hard. I understand why you did it. Jack nodded once. That's enough. Over the following weeks, something shifted. Lisa returned to medical school, but she was different now. Stronger, more focused. Maria visited her twice a week, bringing lunch, talking about everything and nothing. They became friends, real friends. Maria told her about growing up in Jack's world, the violence she'd seen, the loyalty that kept families like theirs together. Jack doesn't show it, Maria said one afternoon. But he respects you more than almost anyone. Lisa looked up from her anatomy textbook. Why? Because you're not afraid to tell him when he's wrong. Maria smiled. That's rare in our world. Lisa thought about the confrontation, the way Jack had listened, explained, didn't apologize, but didn't dismiss her either. He terrifies me, Lisa admitted. Good. Maria's smile widened. He should, but he'll never hurt you, and he'll never let anyone else hurt you either. 1 month after the war ended, Lisa sat in her first clinical rotation. She assisted in an emergency surgery, a gunshot victim bleeding out on the table. Her hands didn't shake. She knew what to do. And as she helped save that man's life, she understood something fundamental. Jack Aaron had given her this. Not just the tuition, not just the safety. He'd given her the chance to become who she was meant to be. She would never agree with his methods, but she would never forget what he'd done for her. That evening, her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Heard you did well in surgery. Keep going. Jay. Lisa stared at the screen, a small smile crossing her face. She typed back, "Thank you for everything." The response came seconds later. "You earned it." And somehow, Lisa believed him. She set down her phone, picked up her textbook, and kept studying. Her future was still hers. But now she had a family watching her back. And in Jack Aaron's world, that meant everything. 1 year later, the air smelled of new beginnings and fresh disinfectant. The university courtyard buzzed with proud parents, chattering students, and white folding chairs aligned like the clean, bright future everyone claimed awaited them. Lisa stood among her classmates in a crisp white coat she hadn't put on yet, fingers trembling around the fabric. She kept smoothing the front of her dress, her heart full and aching in ways she still didn't have words for. A year ago, she was scrubbing dried ketchup off diner tables. A year ago, she was crying over eviction notices. A year ago, no one looked at her twice unless they wanted her to clean something. Now, they kept glancing at her, like they could sense the storm she had walked through to get here. She tried to blend in, but her life refused to let her pretend. The ceremony began with applause that rose and fell like waves. Students walked across the stage one by one, receiving their white coats, hugging professors, taking photos full of pride and relief. Lisa clapped for each of them, smiling, waiting, breathing. When her name was finally called, she stepped forward, lightheaded. She walked up the steps. She bowed her head. Her assigned mentor slipped the white coat onto her shoulders. It felt heavier than she expected, like a promise, like a memory of blood on her hands in a cold alleyway, like redemption stitched into fabric. The audience clapped. Some cheered. Lisa blinked away tears. She didn't see her father. He couldn't attend. Health issues made travel impossible. But she felt him in her chest, proud. She felt Maria's kindness, Jack's protection, and the force of the moment that had changed everything. As she stepped off the stage and joined the crowd again, a quiet hush fell over the lawn. At first, she thought it was part of the ceremony transitioning. Professors looked around, confused. Students paused mid-sentence. Then, a deep, mechanical growl rolled across the sky like thunder. The ground vibrated, paper programs fluttered, parents gasped and pointed upward. Lisa froze, not fear, recognition. She knew that sound. Above the university, breaking through the clouds like a blade slicing open the quiet morning, a sleek black helicopter tilted in descent. The same one that had landed in her yard a year ago. Loud, bold, unapologetic. Students screamed and scattered across the grass. Security guards sprinted toward the landing zone, shouting orders. Professors ducked instinctively as the wind whipped their coats into chaos. But Lisa's lips parted in a trembling smile. A laugh slipped out, wet and cracked with emotion, as tears blurred her vision. The helicopter touched down at an angle that screamed wealth, power, and deliberate drama. Dust and leaves swirled around the lawn like a miniature storm. The door slid open with a clean metallic hiss. Maria stepped out first. Her blonde hair glowed in the sunlight, healthy and soft. Nothing like the blood-matted strands Lisa had first seen in that alley. She wore a cream dress under a long coat that caught the breeze, and she carried herself with the effortless grace of someone who had survived hell and refused to bend. Her smile found Lisa instantly. Right behind her, descending the metal steps with the quiet authority of a man who commanded loyalty without speaking a word, came Jack Aaron. A tailored black suit, a face carved in patience and warning. Eyes that softened only when they landed on the woman standing in a white medical coat. People whispered. Someone said, "Is that?" Another gasped, "Who arrives like that?" But Lisa didn't hear any of it. Jack approached her with the sure, steady stride of a man who had crossed 1,000 lines for his family and didn't regret a single one. Maria joined them, slipping her arm through Lisa's, pride radiating from her like sunlight. Jack stopped in front of her, looking down, not intimidating, but almost reverent. He placed one hand on her shoulder, careful not to wrinkle the new coat. His voice was soft, but every soul on the lawn heard it. "You saved my family, Lisa. Now go save the world." Her throat closed. She nodded, unable to speak. For a moment, just a moment, everything was still. Then she exhaled, long and shaking. She looked around at hundreds of eyes watching her with awe, confusion, even fear. Students who had ignored her before now stared like she had stepped out of a legend. Parents whispered to each other. Professors tried to understand how someone like Lisa had people like them. She stood straighter, held her coat tighter, found her breath. Lisa Georgy, once just a tired waitress scrubbing plates for tips, stepped forward with a MAFIA family behind her, and not a single person dared stand in her way.